Hey everyone, it's Amy here, producer and presenter of the Eerie Excursion podcast, the podcast that collects eerie tales from around the UK, as told by local tour guides and experts. So, as I have been saying in my other recap videos, season 2 is coming out on the 17th of September. So excited to share those stories with you too. So make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss that. In the meantime, I'm doing sort of like a recap slash a highlight reel from season 1. So I wanted to look back at episode 3, which is the first episode in the season, not in Northampton. We go 40 miles up the road, about 40 minutes up the road to Leicester. So specifically, we go to Demontfort University. And even more specifically, we go to the DMU, Demontfort University's museum. Here I have two guides in this episode, Elizabeth and Stephen, who both work at the museum. So the episode begins here at the Castle Great Hall, which was once a court of law for about 800 years until 1990. Now, the process of the court in its early days was super efficient, Elizabeth tells me, because we're talking about the days where certain crimes you would be hung for. So inside of the building would have been the courthouse, and then outside in sort of the area near where the grass is would have been the gallows. So you would have been convicted in the court and then hung out in the gallows outside. In fact, actually, a lot of people who were hung were also buried there. And I use buried in inverted quotes, as Elizabeth tells me. They were criminals, so they weren't really buried that far down or that well. My favourite story in this episode, however, is about a legend called Black Annis. And she's a witch who is said to snatch children. Here's Stephen explaining her legend.
But if children walk through here at midnight, she's said to grab them. But Black Annis is said to use a tunnel system all the way from the Dane Hills. She lived in a cave there and then would come here. But she preys upon children, so she hunts children primarily. And she tears their flesh open, she eats them, and she uses a tree just outside of her cave that she dwells in. And she would hang the skins on the tree and dry it out.
So inside the museum itself is a wealth of different activities, because the museum is actually downstairs in the basement, and you'll hear in the episode us going down the stairs and opening the door. It actually used to be a crypt of a church. In fact, the building, the area that we were in, kind of plays homage to the church in that the hallways are filled with archways. So you kind of, even though it's a very modern building, you kind of feel like you're still in an old church. Now here is a video from inside the museum, and it's also a clip of Elizabeth talking about what it's like to work downstairs in that basement that was once a crypt.
That was the first day that I worked here. So back in 2015, one of the technicians came down and said, "I'm a man of science, you know, but strange things happen in this building, so you might not want to be in here alone at night." And I was like, okay, what do you mean? And he talked about that you can hear this Gregorian chanting, and that they've seen monks floating up and down the corridor.
So as always with these videos, they are just a small, tiny glimmer into the episode. There are so many more stories that Stephen and Elizabeth covered. One thing I found really interesting in the episode was about the idea that DMU kind of sits on these ley lines, you know, this sort of like veil between different worlds and different realities. So definitely worth a listen to hear all about that. And obviously you can listen to it in the link below, and I'll provide a link to the playlist. And as always, remember to subscribe so you don't miss season 2. Finally, though, if you are watching this and you do go to DMU or you have visited the museum, I would love to hear if you've had any spooky encounters. Please leave a comment in the section below.